Hello and welcome back to Vinyl Friday, where I have the flu. But the show must go on. So, welcome back to Vinyl Friday, where I go through my records like a big nerd and talk about why I love them. If you're here for the Beatles, fear not. There are many Beatles episodes in the back catalogue. I'll leave a link in the description. Now, when we haven't been looking at the Beatles or Fleetwood Mac in great detail, we've been working our way through the alphabet. We are somewhere around the letter H. But today we're going to skip ahead to the letter J. We're going to be listening to one of the world's all-time best-selling bands. This band has 25 gold and platinum albums. They've had 19 top 40 hits. That is the second highest number of hits for a band to have without hitting number one. They are second only to Electric Light Orchestra, which had 20 top 40 hits without having a single number one hit.
Don't bring me there.
Anyway, that aside, they experienced a revival in 2005 when one of their songs was featured, some might say butchered, in the TV show Glee, and they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2017. Today's band is Journey, and the album we will be listening to is Raised on Radio. Okay, team. There's been a hitch. I bought this record especially for this episode. What is inside the sleeve is actually a Tina Turner album. So we're gonna pretend we're listening to it on vinyl, even though we're actually listening to a streamed version of it. Bit of a disappointment. But as I said, the show must go on. All of this is accurate anyway. Well, that was a hell of a plot twist. That's actually hilarious. Tragic, but hilarious. But hang on, why are we skipping the rest of H and the letter I? Well, quite simply, this is my little sister's favorite album of all time, and this episode is my birthday gift to her. Happy birthday, Anna. She's on the other side of the world at the moment, but if you'd like to see the two of us in action, doing the Vinyl Friday together, you could watch this episode, or you could watch this episode. You know, go through the back catalog. She's there a few times. I also decided to wear this shirt in her honor because I stole it from her years ago and have remained steadfast in my refusal to return it. Thanks, Anna. This album is also pretty special to me, and here's why. I spent the majority of my adolescence with my head firmly up my ass. For about a 6-year period, I completely ignored my sister. Actually, I completely ignored most people. I was very introspective, if I'm being charitable, self-absorbed, if I'm being brutally honest. And I popped out the other side of that somewhere around 18, at which point I discovered that my sister was living in the same house as me, and she was actually a pretty cool person. We became really close and have remained really, really close since then. But this is an album that we really bonded over, so this album, when I listen to it, reminds me of my sister. Let's begin. Who is Journey? This band has a fascinating history, which begins, oddly enough, with Santana. Guitarist Neil Schon and keyboardist Greg Rowley were originally in Santana's band, but Santana's manager recommended that they go away and make another band, which they did. For several years, they were a jazz fusion come progressive rock outfit. That is, at least until their record label decided that a jazz fusion come progressive rock outfit was not what the people required, and unless they were willing to take on a frontman, the band would be biscuits. I don't think that's a real expression, my brain just supplied it, but feel free to take it up because I think it actually works really well. Biscuits! Predictably, they did decide to add a frontman, and the first one didn't work out. Fortunately, the second one stuck, and that man is Steve Perry. Steve Perry has a voice like a Pack-A-Day angel. He also had the best hair in the world, ever, of any human being. And I suspect that that's not the last we'll hear of the hair. So the band, Journey, skyrockets to popularity following the arrival of Steve Perry and the addition of a new keyboard player, Jonathan Cain. Greg Rowley decided to go and have a family or what have you, and it wasn't conducive to being in the band, which was no longer progressive rock. Anyway, I don't need you guys. I will be on my merry way, etc. So the band really hit the sweet spot with Steve Perry and Jonathan Cain. Kind of makes you wonder, how many bands are there out there that were so close to striking it big, but they were just missing one of the ingredients. With this band, all the ingredients came together. They were performing sell-out arena shows. The vibes were good. We're gonna fast forward to 1985. Vibes are not as good. The band had just come off a huge tour. They were really tired. It had been grueling. The year before, 1984, guitarist Neil Schon had gone away and done a project with a separate group called HSAS. And following that, Steve Perry was like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. He also went off. He did his own solo project called Street Talk, also released 1984. Massive hit, spawned the single Oh Sherry. And if you weren't around at the time of its release, you've probably heard the song in the supermarket. No offense, Steve. It's a good song. So the rest of the band's a little bit miffed about Street Talk. They're like, it sounds like a Journey album. And honestly, duh, of course it sounds like a Journey album. Steve Perry has one of the most recognizable voices in rock music. Of course anything he's on is gonna sound like a Journey record. So Steve Perry is considering leaving the band. He's like, I don't know if I want to do this. He said that the solo project was, I quote, one of the most fun experiences he'd ever had. But then one day, Jonathan Cain, the keyboardist, calls him up and he's like, Steve, I've got all these unfinished songs and I really want to work on them with you. And Steve, being a man with a heart of gold, says, okay, Jonathan, let's get together. Let's do this record. The recording process was not without its drama. There were some changes. They decided that Steve Perry was going to be the producer. They thought he could be a good spokesperson for the band. One of the first things that he and manager Herbie Herbert did is fire the drummer and the bassist. Ross Valerie, Steve Smith were their names, but that's the last we'll hear of them in this story. Bye, guys. They were replaced by other musicians, including bassist Randy Jackson, later of American Idol fame. Steve also changed the title from Freedom, working title, to Raised on Radio, which again miffed the band because they had had a whole thing going with single word titles for their albums. I made a list. Infinity, Evolution, Departure, Escape, Frontiers, Raised on Radio. I get it. It's a change. But I also really love the title of this album. I think it works perfectly. Presumably it's named after the title track, Raised on Radio, of course, which is We Didn't Start the Fire style laundry list of rock and roll song titles, including but not limited to Locomotion, Lucille, Maybelline, The Great Pretender, Peggy Sue, and on and on. I also love the cover, ties in with the whole thing. It's a radio tower that's based on KNGS in California. This one, of course, says JRNY, which stands for Journey, but the original KNGS was owned by Steve Perry's parents. Isn't that sweet? And the title actually looks like the front of a transistor radio. So, you know, they managed to squeeze some themes in there. I think this sort of nostalgia AM radio thing also ties in with the title of the song that we're going to focus on today, The Girl Can't Help It. Now, this is unconfirmed. It's just a hunch I have. But I suspect that this song was named after the 1956 film with the same title. The girl can't have it. She was born to bleed. Starring Jane Mansfield.
Man, oh, Mansfield.
A certified babe and also mother of Detective Olivia Benson. But possibly better known for showcasing a host of early rock and roll stars.
The greatest headline entertainers of the day.
Blue Monday, how are you, Blue Monday? Rockin' is our business, and rockin' is what we do. Oh yeah, rockin' is our business, and rockin' is what we do. Oh yeah, come on everybody, we want you to rock with us too. You tell now we've got Dawn Jack.
It was a tremendously influential film in that it inspired a lot of young people to go out and form bands, many of which would become enormous. You may have heard of one of them. They're called the Beatles. You may have heard of them. Will it Beatles? Yes, it will. Girl Can't Help It, though, by Journey. Great song. Let's break it down. This is a song that is immediately identifiable by its very 80s production. So much reverb on the drums. Sparkly keyboards. That very trademark mid to late 80s guitar tone. Very trebly bass. honestly, I don't mind. I like all of those things. I get that it dates the song, but so what? It came out in 1986. It's just what it sounds like. The music is solid. I appreciate that. I enjoy that. And the production choices, while bold, do contribute, I think, to why this is such a good song. Actually, I think it would be a good song with or without the production. Like, this song would probably work really well as folk rock.
If he could hold her so close in his arms,
A garage rock song.
they live dreams on their own, they'll never stop running.
Or an indie folk song.
If she could show him,
Techno.
girl can't help it, she needs love. He hasn't found what he's looking for.
But it was 1986, so this is what the song sounds like. Structurally, this song employs a very specific kind of writing style, which essentially involves finding a riff, repeating the riff, and changing the bass note underneath it. I think probably the piano correspondent can help us out with this. Guys, the anchor made me sick too. Here's the riff at the introduction. But then the bass note underneath it is changing. And because the bass note is changing, it becomes a totally different chord each time. So at the beginning of the introduction, it's over an A bass, so the chords sound like this. Then when they're over the F, they sound like this. And over the G, they sound like this. So the same thing is happening on the keyboard all through that, but because the bass is changing underneath it, it sounds like a whole host of different chords. A second one that runs through the bridge. This is the riff at the bridge. Over the C, it sounds like this. Then it moves to A flat, and then B flat. Again, same riff, totally different chords as you shift the bass underneath. And another one that runs through the chorus. The chorus is very similar to the introduction, but slightly different. These are the chords, but they're over an F bass, and then an A bass. It's a very keyboard-driven style of writing, because on a guitar, it's really difficult to change the bass note under a chord. I'll show you what I mean. Let's say I'm playing a D chord. In order to change the bass note, I've got to use either my pinky or my thumb. You end up kind of scrunching your hand in uncomfortable ways. On a keyboard, by contrast, there's no contortion, because you're playing the notes with both hands as opposed to playing all of the notes with one hand and all of the execution, the strumming, the picking, whatever, with the other hand. You're free to change the chords and the bass notes at your whim. Given the style of the writing of the song, I'm assuming that it was written by... Actually, I can tell you. Never mind. Apparently it was written by all of them. But it sounds very keyboard-driven. It's a style of writing that was really popular in the late 70s and early 80s by artists like, You know what? Let's have a montage.
We had something to learn. Now it's time.
There's also this fantastic modulation at the bridge between the bit that bridges the verse and the chorus. That bit. Here, it sounds like this.
What do they call on the Lord?
You've come out of the verse, which is sounding like this. The verse is this really sort of cool A minor groove. I've spoken before about how certain keys have like a family of chords that goes with them. If you're in the sort of A minor family, then the corresponding C chord is major, like this. Those are all in the same family. I'm simplifying it, but for the purposes of today's video, that should suffice. The bridge goes to C minor. So it goes from here. Just kidding. Because it's not within that family of chords, it feels like it's coming out of left field. It feels like a surprise. Let's talk about the bass. Randy Jackson is basically... Let's try that again. Randy Jackson is playing the hell out of this track. There's some really interesting licks that he plays throughout the track. Here are some of my favorites. When he plays this in the introduction. This bit. In the middle of the chorus. Let's move on to the vocals. This song is, like I said earlier, characterized by Steve Perry's trademark rasp. He sings like a real champ on this track. It's a very high voice, but an incredibly powerful voice at the same time. You know what? He's a certified babe too. I get it. Some people just have an innate star quality, you know, and you can't look away when they're performing, and I think Steve Perry has that. This seemed to be a very popular sound at the time, this very high, clear male vocal. I don't think we really hear that so much now. Maybe like Tom York of Radiohead. But that's more of like a tortured whisper or whimper, more than like a raspy roar. Let's have another montage. These like high male vocals are sometimes denigrated as being like not masculine. We'll come back to that. But I think that there is an incredible power to this kind of vocal, to being able to execute it really well. This is really, like, this is out of my range. This is very difficult to sing well, especially at the moment. Another thing I love about this song is that I think they're stacking the backing vocals. Again, I don't know this for sure, but it sounds like something similar to what they do in Queen, where each of the band members sings multiple backing vocal parts and then they stack them together to create a thicker, more luscious texture of backing vocal. But again, Steve Perry has this very distinctive vibrato to his voice, which makes it sound almost operatic in places. Like at the coda. Let's get to the coda. The coda is my favorite part of the song. The rest of it's great, but the coda is where it all comes together. And it starts with this staggered, beautiful, cascading vocal part, which sounds like this. Isn't that great? I love that. I love that about this song. And that you can hear what I mean about that sort of almost operatic vibrato that's happening in that harmony there. Like, Steve Perry's vocal prowess is just astounding. The power. Let's listen to it again. I love that. And also the lead vocal is that she's just that way. Oh man. Ah, my poor squeaky throat. It's okay. The show must go on. That's not the highest vocal he's singing. The highest vocal is one above that. Pray for me. She's just that way. The lead vocal goes like this. she's just that way. And then the bottom one sounds like this. She's just that way. Wow, I think that was quite rough. God, it'd be really awful if editor Nancy edited all of those together and then put it up against like what Steve Perry's voice sounds like in order to demonstrate the strength of Steve Perry's vocal. Surely she'd never do that to me though, right? Nah, of course she would never do that. So the harmony's great. I also love how they slide into it, because that all happens in unison before they break apart and stagger. Here. Oh, it's amazing. The song itself doesn't slow down, but it has the effect of slowing down the momentum of the song before it ramps back up for the rest of the coda. That is such a good harmony. The three voices are so locked in, and, you know, it goes without saying there was no auto-tune at that point in time. So they are actually beautifully in tune with each other. Say what you will about 80s production, I think the vocals sound great here. Sue me. Don't sue me. I don't have any money. So that part repeats. It's punctuated with Neil Schon doing his characteristic shredding. Even though the guitar tone is very of its time, he was an excellent guitarist. Apparently he was a total prodigy as a teenager. He joined Santana when he was like 15 or 16.
Every time I see an old Santana video, I look at myself and I'm like, I'm a baby, basically.
And then the last time, the instruments cut. It's a cappella. And the vocals are slightly different from the previous two times. It's a lovely moment in the song because there's this point of dissonance, a sustained chord, and then resolution. Two vocal parts are directly adjacent to each other and then clash in the most beautiful way, like this. It's choral. I like that very much. Anna likes it too, and that's why we're talking about it. Another thing to love about that last line is that for the rest of the coda, Steve Perry's ad-libs are front and center. Right? But when the instruments cut out, that backing vocal part becomes front and center. It's huge and it's right in front of you. Love that. Let's leave Journey there, because this is essentially the point where Journey and the rest of the band go their separate ways. See what I did there? This is my last point. It's tangential to Journey, but that's okay. We're going to go with it. I've been hearing a lot recently about how masculinity is in crisis and how boys don't know what it means to be a man anymore. So if we're in the business of redefining manliness, I would like to submit Mr. Steve Perry as an exemplar of masculine excellence. Hear me out. He is a sensitive artist who is not afraid to be vulnerable, as opposed to a tough guy who is reluctant to talk about his feelings.
I was isolating. People knew me everywhere I was going. It was scary at times.
He is humble rather than boastful.
There's nothing that he can't sing.
I think he's a phenomenal singer. He can sing anything.
He is accountable when he has done something wrong.
He picked the musicians, the songs. He didn't have to be democratic.
Having had those circumstances in front of me today, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have done it.
He is a loyal partner.
She was out with someone else and doing the deal. And I was monogamous to the relationship.
As opposed to a womanizer or an entitled sleazeball, which you seem to see a lot of in this rock star community. He's not afraid to stop and take care of himself when he needs it.
I told him I just don't think I can do it anymore. I think I just want to stop.
You know, as opposed to manning up and pushing through. He has great conditioning technique. Here are some examples. I'll wait here. most importantly, as far as I can tell, he has never been embroiled in any scandals. He's safe. We can love him. I'm sure he has his problems. Everybody has their problems. Everybody has their skeletons. But he's not problematic in the way so many other rock stars seem to be. Looking at you, Anthony Kiedis. And now he's just a happy old dude with a luscious head of hair who makes Christmas albums in his little home studio.
Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Perry, and this is my recording studio. And these are my holiday lights. And these are my holiday assistants.
Good for you, Steve Perry. Keep up the good work, man. And that's it. Happy birthday, Anna. I love you. I hope you learned something new. And if not, I hope your inner 13-year-old delighted in that last photo montage. To everyone else, thank you for hanging out with me. If you enjoyed this episode or you would like to support any of the weird things I do, I'll leave a link in the description to my Buy Me a Coffee page where you are most welcome to make a donation. But no pressure, my friends. If you're curious about what any of my original music sounds like, I'll leave a link in the description to that as well. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you here next week. Have a great weekend!